Hi there, it's lovely to see you. I'm Lorna and we're reading The Mystery of the Smuggler's Wreck by Helen Moss, and this is Chapter 4, A Tough Job. I'm being eaten alive by a shark, Scott panicked. Then, hang on a minute, he thought. It didn't feel like shark teeth ripping into his flesh. It felt like a human hand tugging him out of the hole. He opened his eyes and saw Joe Gordon. And hang on another minute. Since when were there man-eating sharks in Cornwall anyway? Scott kicked away from Joe's grip and backed into the hole in the deck. He just needed a moment. He couldn't let the others see him looking this shaken, and at least he'd have one glimpse inside the wreck before leaving. That's when he saw the skeleton hanging upside down just above his head. Scott swept his torch beam over the pale dome of the skull. Small silver fish darted in and out of its eye sockets. Above that loomed a bulging rib cage and a cracked pelvis, which had become caught in a hook. One arm dangled down as if to welcome Scott aboard. The other was missing. The skeleton must have fallen through from somewhere higher up inside the deck when the plank gave way, Scott figured. The skull bobbed as if nodding in agreement. Scott shrank back in fear. It's alive! Then he realised it was just the movement of the water. He noticed a small object dangling in front of the skull's nose cavity. It appeared to be on a chain around the skeleton's neck. Scott reached out for it, but he was too late. Joe was already hauling him out by the ankle. Meanwhile, Jack was having a rather less adrenaline-packed morning. First, he cycled to the lighthouse to collect drift. Crumbs of compost from the seed tray had found their way into his trainers and mashed uncomfortably into his socks as he pedalled. What was he supposed to do all day while Emily and Scott were off playing Dora the Explorer? That's what he wanted to know. Even the weather was out to get him. A bank of thick cloud had parked itself right on top of the island. At least Drift seemed happy to see him. I don't know what you're wagging your tail about, mate, Jack grumped, ruffling Drift's ears. I'm the useless twerp who's afraid of sharks, remember? Jack couldn't help laughing. At least dogs know the meaning of the word loyalty, he thought. That gave him an idea. We don't need those two, do we, Drifty, he said, grinning. Let's go and see some of our real friends. Halfway to Roshendra Farm, the clouds opened. Jack pedalled as fast as he could, rain slicking his hair into his eyes and plastering his t-shirt to his body. Drift hunkered down in his special basket on the back, which Jack had borrowed from Emily's bike. At least we'd have wetsuits on if we were diving, Jack thought gloomily as he propped his bike against the gate. But he couldn't help smiling when two enormous Dobermans came bounding into the yard, raindrops flying from their sleek black coats, their paws skidding on the wet concrete as they took a sharp corner. Tyson, Rambo, Jack called. The dogs hurtled towards him. Jack remembered for the first time he'd met these fearsome beasts. He thought he was about to be turned into pedigree chum. That was during Operation Dinosaur in the Christmas holidays, when the Dobermans still belonged to their previous owner, a bullying security guard. Now he knew that the worst he had to fear was drowning in a bucket load of slobber. The Dobermans clearly remembered Jack. Rambo planted his paws on his shoulders and licked his chin, while Tyson butted his knees with his huge head. The door of the farmhouse opened. Jack instantly detected cooking smells wafting out from the kitchen. He was getting sugar, vanilla, chocolate. When it came to the sweet stuff, his nose was almost as finely tuned as Drift's. Mrs. White stood in the doorway leaning on her walking stick. She was wearing a long white apron and a hairnet covered her short grey hair. She laughed to see Jack and Drift rolling around with the Dobermans in a mass bear hug/rugby scrum. While Drift and the Dobermans headed off on a squirrel hunting mission in the orchard, Jack dried out in front of the fireplace with the help of a fluffy towel and a mug of hot chocolate. Mrs. White stirred an enormous copper cauldron on the stove. Fudge, she said, I'm making a big batch for the farmer's market in Carrickstow. She scooped a huge wad from the pan with a wooden paddle and walloped it down onto the kitchen table where a marble slab had been placed already. Using a palette knife, she began to smooth the fudge out over the cold surface. It's chocolate caramel swirl, she said, wiping her hands down her apron. If only I had someone to help taste it. Jack stared at Mrs. White in disbelief. Was she actually serious? Finally, his day was starting to look up. He volunteered and took a bite. Brilliant, he said with his mouth full. Although I'd better try a bit more to check that it's cooked evenly. Have you got time to stay and help with another batch? Mrs. White asked. Jack pretended to check his watch. Yeah, I think I can spare a few minutes. professional fudge taster. Now there was another option that their careers teacher had forgotten to mention. It was a tough job, but someone had to do it. As they stirred cream and sugar into the cauldron, Mrs. White asked where Scott and Emily were. Jack explained about the dive to the mermaid. He left out the bit about the Scottish Great White fiasco. After all, Mrs. White didn't need to know that he'd failed to get his diving certificate thanks to his stupid brother winding him up about man-eating sharks. I volunteered to look after Drift. I'm not that fussed about scuba diving. It's overrated if you ask me. Mrs. White smiled. Quite right. If God had meant us to swim underwater, he'd have given us gills. Give me a warm kitchen any day. As Jack sampled his way through the entire range of fudge flavours, Mrs. White chatted. She knew all about Thomas Pendragon and the wreck of the mermaid. Her family had lived in Castle Quay for generations, and all the old smuggling stories had been passed down over the years. She explained how the government had placed massive taxes on all kinds of goods in the 18th century, mainly to fund the war with France, which was why so many people took up smuggling, or at least turned a blind eye to it. The smugglers dug so many tunnels, she said, that the whole island is like a sponge. But it was always rumoured that Pendragon's hiding place was somewhere on the Pendragon estate itself. You know all the stories about the manor being haunted. Jack nodded. How could I forget? Hiding in the wardrobe at the manor and the attic haunted by the midnight ghost had been one of his all-time top 10 scariest moments. Well, most of those rumours were put about just to keep the revenue men from coming too close, Mrs. White said. If they came sniffing round and saw suspicious lights coming and going, they'd be told that it was ghosts on the prowl. Of course, it was really the smugglers bringing back new consignments of goods under cover of night. Jack grinned. So they were pretty clever at getting away with it then? Oh yes, Mrs. White said, slapping another mound of fudge onto the slab. And Thomas Pendragon was the wiliest one of all. He's almost as famous round here as the Carters of Prussia Cove on the mainland. The Carters of Prussia Cove, Jack repeated. Carter's my surname. Who were they? Mrs. White smiled. Maybe they were your ancestors then. They were one of the biggest smuggling families in Cornwall. Jack paused, with a piece of fudge midway to his mouth. Cool, he thought. I'm descended from smugglers. He pictured himself sailing stormy seas, dragging barrels of brandy up a beach by moonlight, and diving into a tunnel to evade the customs men. Arr, Jack Carter, master smuggler, he said to himself in his best pirate accent. It definitely had a ring to it. Join me for Chapter 5.